Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com.
Well, the story getting the most coverage today is a very controversial one in the UK anyway. Obviously, Trump and his Fox and Friends News interview, which I'll talk about shortly, is getting a lot of coverage. But the big story today in the UK is that Britain's most senior child protection officer, a man called Simon Bailey, has said that paedophiles who view indecent images shouldn't face any criminal sanction unless they pose a physical threat to children. He said the policing system had reached saturation point due to the increasing reports of sexual abuse. Important that we remember that. He said they had reached saturation point. Here he is, Simon Bailey, the most senior child protection officer in the country, explaining his views to Sky News today.
The police service, working with the National Crime Agency, are arresting every month over 400 men for viewing indecent imagery of children, and we are safeguarding over 500 children every month. And on top of that, we are then having to deal with the increasing levels of growth of those men, and occasionally women, but predominantly men, that are going into online chat rooms and then seeking to groom children with a view simply to have a sexual relationship with them. And what I'm saying is that the police service has to be able to prioritise its resources and focus on where the greatest risk is being posed to children. That is within chat rooms, that is those individuals that we recognise and identify as high risk. And we have demonstrated over the course of the last few months, in fact over a year now, a commitment to targeting those individuals who are viewing images. But we have got to the point whereby the volumes continue to grow, the number of referrals from other agencies continue to grow exponentially, and we have to look at how we manage the risk, how we are protecting children in the most efficient and effective way. And I'm certainly not talking about not arresting them. I'm certainly not talking about not then putting them on the sex offenders register, because I am absolutely committed to doing that. But what we need to do is we need to be able to create capacity within the whole of the system, that's the justice system with the Crown Prosecution Service, and within our courts, for us to focus on the people who pose a real threat of rape and serious sexual assaults.
Now, the main points that came out of that were that there are 400 arrests a month, which is huge, I would have thought. I think we often talk on this programme about people not understanding the scale of criminality against children. I think most people wouldn't have imagined that 400 arrests a month. That's arrests. So what about the amount of people they don't get? I'd love to know the percentage of those caught as opposed to not caught, but I don't know that. So he said they have to prioritise because they are overwhelmed. Overwhelmed, he said. And he said it's growing exponentially. Now, he was asked about the fact that paedophiles viewing the images were feeding the demand and causing more children ultimately to be harmed.
And I absolutely agree with that, and I recognise it, but we have to place this in the context of the threat that we are now having to deal with. In the early 1990s, there were less than 10,000 indecent images of children in circulation. Now there are in excess of 100 million. And I absolutely recognise and agree that every time one of those images is viewed, it is re-victimisation of that victim, and it is abhorrent. But I have to take a broader safeguarding approach. I have to look at the capacity within the police service to target and deal with the greatest threat and the greatest risk.
So he said prioritise those who will themselves cause harm to children. He said again that they were overwhelmed and that they don't have the resources. Now, Gabrielle Shaw represents the National Association of People Abused in Childhood. She's not happy about this.
First of all, the absolutely staggering numbers that he has outlined is true. Child abuse is absolutely endemic, and it's good and right that we should be talking about this. However, we do have some concerns about the comments that he's made.
What are your concerns?
Well, primarily the message that it sends out to some victims and survivors. This may be seen as yet again the authorities walking away or failing them, and also perhaps the message to would-be offenders to almost a green light to go ahead and download and view these images because the police haven't got the resources to catch me, so I've got a green light to do it. Now I know that's not the intention. I know the resources is the main issue here. But if we were to go further down this path of perhaps decriminalisation, that could have some very serious consequences.
Yeah. Now, Simon Bailey, the aforementioned most senior child protection policeman in the country, is going to get a lot of stick today. In fact, I think he's been hammered right across the board. And victims, survivors and their families have been speaking about him today, and they're not happy. Now, I'm not going to argue with them. How could I? I don't have any business in arguing with them at all. And I won't be trying to score any points by playing to the gallery, which you get with other so-called independent media organisations. We won't do that. Is there an agenda to decriminalise paedophilia, to make it more acceptable in society? I think there is. I really do think there is, and I've explained why I think that in other programmes. Maybe I haven't explained it very well, but I've done my best. I think there is. Is Simon Bailey a part of that? I don't think so. I doubt it. He's a police officer, and when I was listening to him today and I saw him on Sky News and he looked a bit shook, not so much shook, I don't think, with the level of the backlash that he was receiving, but I think genuinely shook because I had the impression listening to him today that he was kind of fitted up. He was pushed out there to make this statement. I'm not actually entirely sure that he agreed with it. But anyway, how do I know? Compartmentalisation, that's the word that came to mind today. He's a bean counter. We love that word, don't we? That old word, he's a bean counter. It's all about the numbers and the resources for him. Now, I think Gabrielle Shaw, who you heard a minute ago, did well today. She understands the resource depletion, but is mindful of decriminalising it. Now, interestingly enough, the Home Office came out today and said viewing child images online is a horrific crime. They were very clear about that. And Labour backbencher Yvette Cooper came out and condemned it as well. So a lot of condemnation of not prosecuting people for looking at images online. He said put them on a register and see can you get them some help, because at this point they haven't yet committed a physical crime against a child. If I was given a wand, I was thinking about this all day long, and as I was watching Sky News and BBC and CNN, this of course kept coming up all day long, and I was thinking, given a magic wand, what would I do? And I want your opinion on this. I want you to tweet at Richie Allen Show, and in an objective way, how do you deal with this? I mean, for my opinion, for my money's worth, if you're looking at images online of children being raped and you're deriving sexual gratification from those images, in my mind, you're committing a very serious crime. And in my mind, it has to be said that you must be a serious threat to the safety of children in your environment. You must be. You certainly can't be around children. Now, do you jail those people? Do you tag them? See, I don't know, really. I'd like to just say, yeah, just put them in prison. Lock them up. Tag them, I don't know. So I'm asking you, what do you think? A guy has been caught with images of child abuse. He hasn't personally abused a child yet. What do you do? I'm going to put my colours, I'm going to nail my colours to the mast, and I'm going to say, because ultimately you have to think, and I know it's a cliche, you have to think of the safety of the youngsters. So for me, you have to put them out of harm's way. So whether that's incarceration in some sort of facility, I suppose that's what I would go for. At Richie Allen Show on Twitter, Richie at richieallen.co.uk. Let me know. It's been a big story here today in the UK. Please let me know what you think. What would you do with somebody in that instance? Okay, right, just going to move on briefly. Now, Lauren Gambino, great name, eh? Great name. Lauren Gambino was writing in The Guardian today, and this is what she wrote. Donald Trump will present his economic vision during his first joint address to Congress on Tuesday evening, a speech which is expected to solidify the populist agenda that helped sweep him to victory in November. In a pre-taped interview with Fox and Friends on Tuesday morning, Trump said, "All I can do is speak from the heart and say what I want to do." Trump's speech to Congress follows a dizzying first 40 days in office that have included a public spat over the size of his inaugural crowd, sustained and widespread protests against his presidency, a hasty rollout of his travel ban that caused chaos at airports and was later blocked by courts, diplomatic flare-ups with Mexico, Australia, Sweden and France, the resignation of his national security advisor, and renewed questions about his administration's ties to Russia. Lauren Gambino writing in The Guardian today. Now, we'll talk more about this with Michael Rivero of WhatReallyHappened.com in the second hour. Now, speaking of his interview with Fox and Friends, Trump expanded on his plans to spend more money than ever on the US military.
Well, we're going to spend a lot more money on military. We really have to. We have no choice. And a lot of people think it's a tremendous amount of money. It could be actually $30 million, $30 billion more than that. We're going to upgrade our military very substantially. Remember this, I also am going to get involved in negotiating. We have many planes and boats and ships and everything that we are spending too much money individually on. We're going to get involved in negotiating. We're going to be able to get, I think, a lot more product for a buck. And I'm going to be very, very serious about it. We saved $700 million plus on a F-35 after I got involved. And I have to tell you, Lockheed was terrific. But we saved a lot of money on airplanes, and that number is going to increase very substantially as we keep going. We will be having the greatest military that we ever had by the time I finish.
What he said at the very beginning of that was very interesting to me. He said, "We really have to. We have no choice." Listen again.
Well, we're going to spend a lot more money on military. We really have to. We have no choice.
We have no choice. What did he mean by that? Who's he taking orders from? Well, you know, and I know. And then he said Lockheed Martin is terrific. And remember, this is the guy who said that the US would retreat, remember. Now, I don't mean retreat in terms of run away, but he said they would draw back, that interventionism would come to an end under his tenure. He said we won't get involved. He spoke loudly on the campaign trail about how intervention in Iraq and Libya has turned out to be a disaster. And now he's gone on a spending spree. At the same time, he has gone back on another important pledge. You'll remember he complained about NATO and about the United States propping up the militaries of NATO countries. Well, now, of course, he's gone back on that, and he's pledged that the US will continue to play the leading role in the organisation. And he made that very clear, not only to Theresa May when she visited him, but he also made it clear to Bibi Netanyahu. Now, I know David has called him the chaos president. That's what he is. Now, also in that interview, interestingly enough, he gave himself an A. That's an A grade for what he's done so far, but a C for communication.
We're running a very good, efficient government. Now, in terms of achievement, I think I'd give myself an A, because I think I've done great things, but I don't think I and my people, I don't think we've explained it well enough to the American public. I think I get an A in terms of what I've actually done, but in terms of messaging, I'd give myself a C or a C+. All
right, how are you going to change that then?
Well, maybe I change it during the speech.
Yeah, he also said that he would be a hypocrite if he attended the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which of course is an annual event attended by journalists and politicians. And he said he would be a hypocrite if he attended in light of, quote, fake news, end quote, there, divide and conquer. Chaos everywhere. Follow davidicke.com/headlines for the alternative view on Donald Trump. Don't just get your information on Trump from the Trump Nightly News, presented by Alex Jones and Paul Watson every day of the week. Check out other opinions on him. We'll talk more about Trump in the second hour, of course, with Michael Rivero. There's been a few tweets on what Simon Bailey was saying today. Simon Bailey being the country's most senior child protection police officer. So we're going to have a look at some of those tweets. Yeah. Was momentarily distracted. Keep them coming in at Richie Allen Show, Richie at richieallen.co.uk. Hubertes tweets, we must address the sick society that we are being encouraged, forced to live by. Scum and hang child rapists seriously, says Hubertes there. Well, I don't believe in capital punishment, Hubertes, but there you go are. Jay tweets, has to be jail tweets, Jay, though the judge who is sending the person down has probably made and starred in the video, says Jay. Joanne says, what's the difference in watching TV like Netflix, murder programs? Those programs glorify murder. Not saying I agree, it's a difficult one. David Stanford says, they are mentally sick, Richie, and therefore will always pose a threat to children. Lock them up, throw away the key, sick, and then a swear word. Faisal tweets, however you deal with sex offenders, the decision should be made without making excuses about resources for a start. Tiger tweets, anyone looking at child abuse is creating a demand for this. Don't forget, someone is making and paying money for this. Steve Clayton tweets, take away the means. Remove the hardware and the internet access, then remove their eyesight, says Steve with a big smiley face. So I think he's obviously joking about that there. Keep those tweets coming in. Tristan tweets, by the way, even if you don't have the resources, why announce it? Let them think that the police have the resources, says Tristan. Thanks for those tweets. Keep them coming in at Richie Allen Show on Twitter and email richie@richieallen.co.uk.